The plastic handles of the bags were cutting into my fingers by the time I trudged up the last few steps to my porch. My old cabin sat hunched in the clearing like it had been there for centuries, weathered wood, cracked porch swing, and smoke-stained chimney all lined against the brittle January wind. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every time I came up the drive with groceries and a tired sigh, I reminded myself, this mountain was supposed to be my quiet, my reprieve. But quiet has a way of breaking at the worst possible moments. I was halfway to my front door when a shadow moved out from behind the porch swing. A boy, 16, maybe 17, all bone and angles drowned in a camel-colored hoodie that probably cost less than my socks, slouched into my path. He blocked the porch like he had grown roots into my wooden steps. For a second I thought he might ask for directions, or maybe he was just some kid wandering the back roads. But then he tilted his thin chin toward the grocery bags hanging from my arms and said flatly, like it was routine, "My mom says people like you need to share your food if you want to stay welcome around here." He didn't ask. He demanded. The cold stung my throat when I laughed, the sound half cough, half disbelief. "Nice try," I said, trying to step around him. "Halloween's months away, kid." But he didn't budge. His arms hung loose, but his boots were planted like he'd been poured in concrete. And then, so quickly I had to jerk my body backward, his hand shot out for one of the bags. The plastic stretched and snapped against my wrist as I pulled away. One bag swung off balance and slammed into the stair railing. A carton of eggs burst with a sick crack, yellow yolks leaking down the steps, dripping into the snow below. The boy's lip curled. He muttered something low under his breath, something about city freeloaders. That word, freeloader, sat heavy in the cold air. I told him to step aside. Calm at first, but sharp enough to cut. He smiled wider, showing teeth, satisfied he'd drawn blood somewhere inside me. He didn't move. That's when I knew exactly whose boy this was. Karen's reputation on the mountain wasn't something you needed introductions for. Everyone knew her. Everyone had a story, the nuisance neighbor, the self-appointed gatekeeper of our woods, though she'd only moved here a decade earlier. She nagged county officials until her voice was practically part of the courthouse decor. Claimed she wanted peace and quiet, but always had a phone glued to her ear, whining about outsiders ruining the view. So of course this kid wasn't here on accident. Of course he was her blood. The crunch of tires on gravel shoved the realization home. Sure enough, Karen came striding up my drive like she owned the place. She always moved with that stiff, righteous posture, as though her back was braced by invisible strings tugged straight from a courtroom sketch. Phone in one hand, smug judgment dripping off her face. The boy glanced at her. She murmured something under her breath. "I swear I caught, good boy." I asked, voice taut with anger, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen tilted her head the way crows tilt theirs, calculating, cold. "We aren't looking for trouble," she said sweetly, "a predator's coup. We just want to make sure folks who come here don't hoard supplies that good real residents actually need." My fingers strangled the grocery bags at my sides. Apples shifted, bread sagged. "Get off my porch. Take your kid or I call the sheriff." She laughed. Not the soft kind that fills rooms, but brittle, sharp, rattling. "Oh, go ahead," she said. "Please. I'd love for the sheriff to come all the way out here just to tell me I'm wrong." She gestured at her son. "Come on, sweetie. Did you get everything I told you?" "Not yet," the boy grumbled, eyes on my groceries. Everything she told him. The phrase made bile rise in my throat. This wasn't some impulsive teenage stunt. This was training. A mission. She'd sent him to rob me, to test me, to see just how far they could push. The boy lunged again for my groceries, his skinny fingers brushing against the milk jug in one of the bags. "Enough," I snapped, wrenching it away. My grip slipped on another bag, groceries rattling inside like loose bones. Karen's grin sharpened. Then she raised her phone like a priest raising a holy relic. Her thumb hovered over the record button. "You don't want to go down this road," she sang. "Because I'll tell the cops you assaulted my son. I'll have the video to prove it." I stared at her. Blank at first, then filling with the kind of disbelief that curdles into fury. "You're out of your mind." She shrugged. "We'll see how sane I am when the law gets here." So I did exactly what she dared me to. I punched in the sheriff's number right there, nearly fumbling it with my cold, stiff thumb. My chest felt hollow but sturdy, like a drum about to burst. Dispatch answered. I said the name, Karen, and didn't even have to run through details. They promised to send Holt himself. At that, her grin twitched. Just a flicker, but I saw it. She tried to drown the crack in more performance, waving her hand, telling her boy to stand his ground. He planted himself again, blocking the door like my own threshold had turned into a checkpoint. I told him through clenched teeth to move. His grin spread unnervingly slow. Then he spat, thick and wet, right at my boots. Karen's voice followed, acid and silk. Disgrace. I know exactly what kind of man you are. Wind needled my skin, each second stretching taut with cold anticipation. The boy puffed up with her approval, pacing like a guard dog, too dumb to realize he was guarding a bone that was never his. Karen recorded, false light glittering in her sunglasses. And then, salvation's sound, the crunch of another vehicle's tires crawled up my driveway. For the first time that afternoon, I felt a tufts of breath push out in something like relief. The battered white SUV of the sheriff's department pulled into view. Holt stepped out with a gait that said he'd done this too many times before. His expression was carved into stone, tired, unflinching, familiar. He didn't need backstory. He knew me. He knew her. He knew this theater had been running on repeat for years. The boy's bravado flickered pale under Holt's eyes before reigniting in puffed chest defiance. Karen quickened her steps toward the sheriff, her phone still raised like a sword. Her face shifted instantly from smirking villainy to trembling maternal victimhood. I recognized the shift. I'd seen it too many times. But still, watching her in full performance mode twisted my insides. Karen's voice rang sharp enough to wake the valley. Sheriff, he threatened my baby. He hid him. He refuses to share, he's hoarding supplies when families are going hungry. Arrest him. Holt didn't answer right away. His eyes moved across the scene like scanning suspects in a lineup. He landed on me first, feet braced on smashed eggs bleeding into the snow. Then on the shattered grocery bags dangling from my hands. Then on Karen's record button tight grip, her son posturing on my porch. His jaw ticked. Finally he asked, voice slow and deep, "So explain to me, Karen, why your boy is standing on his porch with his food?" The boy shuffled. Karen's jaw snapped shut, then flared again. "Because this porch is community property, that's why." Holt lifted an eyebrow. "When exactly did private cabins become community property?" "That's why." Holt lifted an eyebrow. "When exactly did private cabins become community property?" Something deep and seismic cracked in her expression. I almost laughed, but the eggshell crunch under my feet kept me still. From the inside, my cabin glowed warm against frost-slick windows. But standing on those steps with smashed eggs dripping yellow into the snow, groceries sagging, Karen and her son drawing lines in my home, somewhere between fury and dread, I realized the piece I thought I'd built was once again splintering. The snow on my torn-up porch steps hadn't even stopped swallowing egg yolk when Sheriff Holt finally stepped closer, boots leaving a steady crunch in the frozen gravel. His breath came out calm puffs, steady like a man who'd been through shouting matches, domestic disputes, barn fires, and no small number of drunken brawls. In a place like ours, that was Tuesday. He didn't need me to explain, Karen. He already knew. Everyone did. I stood motionless, clutching the sagging grocery bags, while Karen swooped forward like an actress spotting her opening cue. She plastered a trembling smile across her lips, eyes bright as glass, voice dripping enough sugar to rot teeth. "Oh, thank God you're here, Sheriff," she said, one hand still clutching her phone upright at chin level, the other reaching dramatically toward her son. "We need protection. She jabbed a manicured finger at me, has been threatening my baby, cornering us, refusing to share food during a time of need. He even attacked my boy." Her son straightened, puffing up like a rooster auditioning for the county fair. He didn't look scared. He looked proud. Like he had Karen's approval for once, and that was enough to swell his chest like a balloon. Holt's gaze moved from Karen's frantic gesturing to the boy's smug posture, then down to the eggs dripping in fractured shells across the steps of my porch. The silence was a whip crack. Holt let it stretch as he glared at Karen. "Attacked, huh? And this is why your boy has 2 working arms and both hands on someone else's groceries." Karen blinked. For half a second she faltered. But then she launched back in haughty as ever. "This porch is community property. He doesn't own this space. He is hoarding supplies that should be shared. We were doing what any decent family would do in times like these." The boy chimed in, his voice sharp as broken kindling. "Yeah. People like him take more than they deserve. City parasites." His spit-laced insult fell onto snow like a rotting apple. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from shouting. Holt's jaw flexed twice, his molars grinding. When he finally spoke, his words cut through the cold. "Karen, since when did this private cabin turn into community property? I thought deeds still meant something in this county." Karen cocked her head, her voice climbing into theatrics. "Oh, come on, Sheriff. Don't play dumb. You know what's happening in this country. Outsiders come in, bleed us dry, claim things that don't belong to them. We're protecting what's ours, what's everybody's. She waved her phone again like it was proof, a digital badge of honor. Maybe she was still recording, maybe not. With Karen, you never knew if the weapon was loaded. She aimed it wherever she wanted the story to change. Holt turned his gaze back to me. Stay inside for now. His voice was low, quiet, and final. The kind of command meant to keep blood pressure from boiling into broken knuckles and court dates. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that leaving my bags out here was surrender, that letting Karen stand on my porch was letting a fox guard the henhouse. But I'd seen enough in Holt's eyes to know he wasn't making a suggestion. So I stepped over the broken eggs, nudging groceries closer with my boot before retreating back through my door. My screen door snapped closed behind me, and that subtle barrier, mesh and wood, felt like glass between two worlds. Inside, my cabin was warm, milk sour from a busted carton, bread crushed and crooked. Outside, Karen's voice rose louder, sharper, weaving lies like vines around every word. Through the window, I saw her lean in close to Holt, lips trembling with feigned grief. You should cuff him right now. This isn't safe for my boy. Look at him, he's terrified. Terrified? The kid was pacing like a bouncer at a nightclub, boots scraping the porch boards, eyes flicking down to my grocery bags every few seconds like a raccoon circling trash cans. I pressed my palm against the freezing window pane to keep myself steady. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Craig, the neighbor across the road. You good? Need help? I stared at the glowing words, then typed nothing. My thumb hovered, then slipped back into silence. Texts meant Karen could twist more narratives. More outside interference. My best weapon tonight was stillness. Let the show unravel itself. So I stood, watching through streaked glass as Holt tried to keep his patience intact. Karen worked her stage like she was running for office in a county of one. She wailed about corruption. About people like me coming to steal, freeload, squat. Then she pivoted, accusing Holt of being part of it. Her voice rang across the frozen yard with enough pitch to split logs. You're all in on it. Protecting outsiders, protecting criminals who move in and try to take what's ours. Don't think I don't see it, Holt. I'll call state police. I'll call the news. You're a traitor. For just a flicker, Holt's face cracked with the strain of his patience. A vein pulsed clearly in his neck. His right hand flexed near his duty belt, but he didn't shout. Not yet. The boy meanwhile spit on my porch again. Then he crouched to tow one of the smashed eggshells, laughing when the yolk smeared across the wood like a bruise on my steps. My fingers curled so hard around curtain fabric that my nails dug holes into the cloth. More headlights flared faintly at the edge of the road. Another neighbor's curtains twitched. The air beyond my porch grew thicker, heavier, charged by tension as more witnesses took quiet notice. And Karen fed on it. She launched her sermon, speakerphone blaring, dispatchers trying to placate her hysteria. We need real cops, not phony small-town boys covering for freeloaders. Get someone important out here. She wound her way in urgent spirals around Holt's SUV, dragging her son like a stage prop who alternated between sulking and puffing his chest out bigger. He muttered, "Parasites again," this time loud enough I think he wanted Holt to hear. He was daring him. The sheriff's response was ice-water calm. He positioned himself firm at the base of my porch steps, standing tall, crossing arms, blocking the teenage boy's path to my groceries with his presence alone. The boy spat again. Holt simply raised one brow, tilting an unimpressed gaze down until even the kid had to flinch. Karen caught the flinch and screamed louder to cover it. He's corrupt. Intimidating my baby. He's scaring us with his big uniform and badge. This is harassment. Through my glass, with frost catching white in my breath, I had to muffle laughter. Her baby outweighed me and strutted like he was trying out for villain of the week. But Holt didn't laugh. Holt didn't move. His stillness was louder than shouts. I realized then, that patience, that calm was his weapon. And tonight, Karen was cutting herself open on it. Snow drifted down heavier, flakes glowing in porch light. It dusted Karen's hair, turning it angelic. If you didn't know her, if you couldn't hear her words, you might mistake her for gentleness framed by twinkling stars. But words carry weight. The weight was bile and venom. Parasites, thieves, conspiracies, traitors. The neighbors across the road stepped out, one holding a phone. A little red light blinked alive, evidence archiving each sharp instant of shriek and spit, weaving a story no false report would clean up later. Suddenly, the theater Karen controlled was no longer hers. The audience wasn't clapping. The audience had their screens raised. It was shifting. Inside, I pressed my forehead against the glass, my breath fog smudging the cold pane. My groceries sat defeated by the door, torn bags crumpled, eggs shattered, milk sour. My stomach growled less from hunger than humiliation, from knowing it had to come to this. Food torn apart, my steps slimed yellow, before my own sheriff had to referee my right to carry supplies home. Karen's voice clawed through the air. I know people in high places, Holt. You'll be lucky to survive your badge by morning. His face remained stone as the snow gathered. I almost smiled. Almost. Because this wasn't over. It was still building. The cold window glass hummed against my forehead like it was trying to pass its stillness into me. But it couldn't. My blood hummed hotter than the coffee cooling in silence behind me. Outside, what had started as a porch confrontation was unfolding into a full-blown one-act play. Karen's stage, her voice cast as both director and victim, her son prowling the boards like a snarling bodyguard who didn't quite know his lines. The sheriff stood steady. A marble statue with breath that steamed gently in the winter air. Holt's patience was iron. Mine was paper. Each second Karen dragged her long vowels louder, each spit of venom from her son, sliced my composure thinner. Through the slant of porch light and drifting snow I could watch the boy pace. He was too lanky to look intimidating on his own, but entitlement has a way of adding a few inches of make-believe height. He circled the groceries I hadn't pulled inside, boots dragging, spitting words under his breath like cussing could conjure respect. My eggshells cracked under his toe, splattering yolk, streaking pale yellow into the snow like bruises on white skin. I clenched my fist. I wanted to storm out, but Holt's earlier order, stay inside, buzzed like barbed wire in my ears. So instead I watched. Isn't that always what you end up doing around Karen? Watching, waiting, calculating, not because she deserves the stage but because she steals it and dares you to contradict her. Her voice pitched higher, speakerphone raised, calling state dispatch again. These small-town boys don't know what they're doing. The sheriff's in on it. He's covering crimes. I want state police out here and the news and cameras, real cameras. Not these yokels with their corrupted footage. That was when I saw the glow across the road. Old man Cray had shifted his curtain aside, his phone shining bright like a lighthouse. Moments later, he stepped onto his porch in half-zipped coat, face set into the grin of a man who, finally, had tonight's entertainment handed to him. He didn't wave. He didn't look away. He just filmed. Karen's son noticed and snapped his middle finger high. Cray shrugged, expression unreadable behind his phone camera, like he'd been waiting decades for the circus to plant itself under his pine trees. Karen of course didn't catch it. She was too busy spinning wild fictions into the mouth of the dispatcher. The words tangled the longer she went on, a patchwork quilt of accusations so ill-stitched it threatened to fall apart each time her voice cracked. One second I was a hoarder. The next I was a dangerous squatter. The next, laughably, the sheriff was a deep state imposter with fake paperwork. Holt didn't twitch. Not a blink. I'd have sworn he was carved from the same stone holding up courthouse statues. The boy spit again. Spit on my porch. Spit on my driveway. Spit in Holt's direction. He spat hatred like his lips carried a faucet hooked to an endless tank of bile. Each glob froze gray against the snow, steaming faintly like disease trying to crawl free of a carcass. "What are you staring at?" he muttered, glaring toward my window. "You scared? Stay hiding, city boy." I closed my eyes and let him chew his own teeth against the silence. That's the trick when someone's baiting you. The silence isn't defeat. It's a shovel. They bury themselves with it. Karen carried on her rant like a revival preacher whose voice found crescendos in every random word. This cabin was promised long before he came here, or, I pay taxes, real taxes. Her boy barked every insult like punctuation. It wasn't logic anymore. Logic had been ripped from the stage long ago. This was a performance. And like any good theater, it needed an audience. And sure enough, the audience gathered. Cray wasn't the only one standing outside with his phone. Two more neighbors trudged into view, bundled tight against the snow, their screens glowing like electronic lanterns. Then another pair, whispering, holding each other's arms, half horrified, half entertained. Before long, there were 9 people perched at the property line. Silent, watching, the way you watch a bonfire, knowing if you turned your back it might swallow the whole forest. Karen gave them everything. She waved her hands, her phone, her accusations, her son. It was all spectacle. "This isn't just about me," she cried. "This is about every good citizen fighting against corruption. He brings outsiders into our community, hoards food, abuses children. Yes, sheriff, a child. And you protect him. She jabbed her finger toward Holt like she was stabbing scripture into flesh. Her son slammed his boot harder against my eggshells. Crack, splatter, crunch. The absurdity nearly split me in half. One part horror, one part comedy. I wanted to laugh until my stomach hurt. But instead all I could feel was the gnawing dread of being outnumbered, outvoiced, with a woman who could spin lies faster than truth could even lace its boots. The narrative belonged to her unless Holt decided to wrestle it back. And so far he had only given her rope. Rope that she was winding gleefully around her own neck. The wind picked up, biting sharper. My dog Daisy whined behind the bedroom door, hating the shouting, the pitch. I didn't call her out. She didn't deserve Karen's rancor either. Text buzzed again. Craig, want me to call the news? I stared at it until the letters blurred. Didn't answer. This circus didn't need headlines. It needed resolution. I leaned harder against the glass. My breath fogged my view, but the shapes were clear. Holt like an iron gate, Karen spinning like a deranged weather vane, her boy circling like a mutt who didn't realize the gate was locked against him. Neighbors filming. Snow spiraling. And me inside. Watching. Mine but not mine. My groceries sagging like proof that possession didn't equal security. Karen's shriek broke through even the insulated walls. You think you can stand there and intimidate us, Holt? You're as rotten as he is. You've picked the wrong family to cross. I know people in high places. We'll have your badge, your name, and this squatter out of our mountain by sunrise. Her voice cracked, raw edges showing through, but that only fueled her more. Her son hooped at her side, excited by the chaos, emboldened like a hyena wailing behind its mother. He picked up a cardboard box from my scattered bags, shook it hard enough the cereal inside rattled. He sneered, throwing it back down to splatter across my porch. Karen smiled at him, proud. That's my boy, she said, thinking she'd whispered, but I heard it. The bile rose again in my throat. Not because of the ruined groceries. Not because of the show. But because I realized this wasn't just Karen fighting neighbors. This was Karen raising the next Karen. And the thought chilled me more than the snow pressing against the windows. The neighbors began shifting. Not leaving, just murmuring quieter, shaking their heads, the brighter glow of phones catching every word. Karen thought it helped her. But slowly, palpably, the crowd wasn't with her. They were documenting her. Cataloging her. Holt's silence finally snapped, not into shouting but into words sharp enough to cut bark from trees. Karen, he said, plain, low, steady. Enough. She turned mid-rant, her mouth already unhinged for the next volley of shrieks. But something in his tone paused her. His stillness eclipsed even the snow drifting down. Her boy sneered anyway, spit cracking against my wood steps. Karen's eyes never left Holt, searching, prodding, wondering if his patience had limits. And I realized the scale had tipped. She had been playing for an audience halfway convinced. But the more rope she pulled, the more she wrapped until there wasn't slack, only a noose tightening in slow seconds. And Holt, patient old Holt, had only to stand there until she strangled herself with her own narrative. Inside, my stomach roiled, equal parts fury and bleak relief. The worst part of fighting Karen is never the shouting. It's the waiting. Waiting for her storm to blow all its hollow wind into the trees until nothing's left. But I knew better than to pretend this was over. Holt's tone had shifted. The audience was present. Karen's mouth ran wild, but her words crumbled into nonsense. And that meant the play was still climbing, the act wasn't finished. Because someone like Karen doesn't stop when she loses the room, she just screams louder until tow trucks arrive and the whole damn village is dragged into the mess. The cold in the valley deepened until it pressed heavy against the windows, a silence broken only by Karen's shrill voice cutting through the snow like a saw blade. Her boy prowled across my porch as if every scuffed boot print was a claim, his eyes darting from my groceries to my window like he was daring me to crack the frame and yell back. I didn't move. Holt's words still echoed in my bones, stay inside. Sometimes the smartest move is obeying a man who already knew what kind of storm he was standing in. Then the sound arrived. A low diesel rumble rolled up the drive, shuddering through the trees and rattling the icicles clinging to my roof. The kind of heavy, practical sound that doesn't come to ask questions, only to haul something away. The tow truck's orange light flickered through pale snow like a beacon. Karen spun toward it and shrieked so loud I thought her voice might snap. The battered old county tow truck growled to a stop behind her minivan, boxing it into the churned snowbank she'd carved across my yard. Its lights painted the tree trunks orange, engine humming like satisfaction long delayed. The driver stepped out slowly, wiping grease-stained gloves on a jacket that looked older than me. He didn't flinch when Karen lunged at him, arms slicing the air. You can't touch my van. This is an outrage and abuse of authority. You'll ruin my vehicle, you'll hear from my lawyer. The driver lifted both hands, palms outward in surrender to her fury. But his eyes flicked to Holt with the weary patience of a man called to dozens of similar scenes, the kind who knew enough to let lawmen deal with storm clouds and cheap sunglasses. Holt nodded once. That was all the driver needed. He turned back to the rig and unspooled thick, steel-braided chains with a clink like barbed music. Karen howled. Her son caught the panic and surged forward like a faithful hound, boots pounding my porch boards. He zeroed on my bags again like snatching a box of soup would score points in some twisted family game. This time I didn't wait. I threw the door open so hard the frame banged back against the cabin wall. Cold air rushed in, cutting sharp through the smell of spilled milk and crushed bread. Her boy froze halfway through lunging for the top bag. His eyes flicked to mine, calculating. His lip curled. Then he spat again, the wet glob bouncing off the snow with a sick little sound that seemed louder than the tow truck engine. I didn't flinch. I just stared back, hands braced on the door frame, saying without words that he didn't scare me. Move back, Holt barked suddenly, striding up before the boy could turn his sneer into a grab. The authority in his voice cracked ice from pine branches. The kid did step back reluctantly, mumbling curses sharp enough to slice but hollow as wind. Karen whipped around at the noise, her hysteria splitting again into shrill flame. She left the tow driver alone and sprinted back toward the porch, her phone wobbling in one hand, her declarations tumbling over each other so fast they lost edge. He's threatening my child again. He's harassing us. This is criminal behavior. You can't let him stand there with groceries while we starve. This is abuse. The word abuse hit like rotten fruit lobbed at the wrong wall. Holt didn't dignify it. He gestured to the driver. Hook it. The chain slapped against the frozen ground, a drumbeat of finality as the tow truck man crouched and looped it under her rear axle. Karen shrieked, lunged, practically throwing herself at the bumper. You can't. That's private property. The irony of her screaming about private property after staking claim to mine nearly dropped me laughing. By now the crowd of neighbors had doubled. 2 more cars idled on the side road, their headlights collateral floodlights framing Karen against the snow. Folks I'd seen only at town hall meetings were now wrapped up in scarves and filming every twitch, faces trembling between anger and disbelief. Karen didn't see the audience. Or maybe she thought they were hers. She spun, hands clamping her phone, shouting into speaker. Yes, send backup. Yes, I'm being assaulted. He's towing my van illegally, he's damaging my property. Arrest them all. The sheriff, the squatter, the driver, they're all criminals. The dispatcher's muffled fatigue bled through the line even from across the drive. Karen didn't hear it. Her son stomped up 2 more steps toward the porch, shoulder brushing Holt, trying to muscle past him again. This time Holt's hand snapped out faster, square against the boy's chest. Not rough. Just solid. Back. Down. The words froze clouds in the boy's throat. But anger still twisted his face, ogre-like in its teenage ugliness. He spat another slur, one ugly enough even my dog whimpered in the back room. That broke something in the silence of the crowd. I heard it, a neighbor barking one grim laugh, disbelief sharp as the crunch of snapping twigs. Karen's eyes surged wide. She lunged, shoving both hands into Holt's shoulder like she could physically yank his authority away. Don't you touch my child. He's a minor. Holt straightened, unmoved, a rock against her storm. His voice cut low and steady. Ma'am, he's standing on a grown man's porch threatening to steal groceries. Don't test me again. The tow chain groaned. Metal bit metal. The minivan jolted as the rig engaged, wheels churning against snow. With the screech of frozen earth surrendering, the van lurched forward 2 feet, inches from submission. That sound tore through Karen like lightning. She shrieked. A scream not of bravado but true panic. She flung herself sideways, clawing at the driver's door with trembling fingers, trying to wedge her arm between steel machines. The driver stepped back, startled, but Holt surged forward again, planting himself between her and disaster. Karen. Enough. Step back. You're obstructing. But she couldn't stop. She hurled more words, mostly nonsense, broken syllables strung into half-threats. Lawsuits, federal law, conspiracies. All while her son, emboldened by chaos, bent low and reached for the chain, gripping it like he thought he could stop it with his bare hands. Let it go. Holt barked. The driver froze mid-crank. Don't touch that chain, son, Holt said again. You'll lose your fingers. The boy hissed obscenities, jerking his hand back only when Holt stepped closer, radiating size and command enough to counter teenage rage. The sky above had bruised purple, snow thickening around orange lights until the whole drive looked like a stage drowning in smoke and chaos. Neighbors muttered now, shifting not in boredom but in collective indignation. Her audience was gone. Karen had no script left but tantrum. She spun on Holt, spit spraying. "I will sue you. I will sue your county. You'll lose your badge." Holt calmly spoke into his radio. "Impound secured. Prepare paperwork for obstruction." Karen's knees nearly buckled at that single word, obstruction. The tow truck groaned forward again, pulling her van from the snowbank like a tooth being extracted. Its wheels shrieked and clung before finally surrendering, rolling obediently onto the gravel road. Karen screamed and lunged again, but Holt caught her this time, not rough, not cruel, just firm. His thick arm barred her chest like a fence post. "Step away." "What?" "Warning." Her voice cracked then, shredded from hours of pitch, turning not into fury but into gasping sobs. "My baby needs that van. You criminals, you monsters. God will punish you." Her son froze when her shrill gave way to tears. His bravado faltered, flipping to shame. His boots scraped as he half-stepped backward. For the first time the bluff had run dry. The script was done. And everyone knew it. The tow truck's back lights glowed red, chains taut. Her vehicle hung behind it like a vanquished prize horse, slowly dragged away under recording phones and judgmental silence. Karen sagged, her fists still trembling but her voice choked thin. Her son sulked, one finger twitching toward my groceries but not daring under Holt's shadow. I let the screen door slam closed, the echo final like closing curtains on the act. Outside, neighbors whispered, wrapping scarves tighter against the cold. Some laughed, small, sharp laughs cutting into night air like an aftershock. Their phones stayed trained, every angle captured, every lie already archived. The performance was over. But just like those broken eggs under my porch steps, part of me knew stains don't scrub out quick. The tow truck's tail lights cast a fading red glow between the trunks, pulsing weakly through snow that fluttered like ash. Karen's minivan dragged behind the rig, chains taut and groaning as if even the machinery was tired of being yoked to her tantrums. The chorus of phones filming it slowed to a hush. Neighbors, bundled and stiff, breathed little clouds that looked heavier than they should have, bearing witness not just to her fiasco but to mine as well. For a moment I thought it might all be done. The circus needed its ringmaster's ride and it was gone, hauled off like one more piece of junk left in the wrong yard. But one thing about Karen, storms don't end because their thunder runs out. They end only when they've chewed through every tree. She stayed. Her boots carved grooves into my driveway as she turned back from the sight of her van disappearing into twilight. She rounded on Holt, her hands fluttering like panicked birds until they clenched into fists. Her phone was gone now, tucked away, but she didn't need it anymore. The crowd was recording. Her performance had an audience whether she liked what it was seeing or not. Her boy stuck close, his oversized hoodie hunched like armor, his lip curled into the familiar sneer, but I saw it then. Beneath the bravado, skin pale in the glow of cruiser headlights, his swagger quivered like wet cardboard. Bluff had limits. Karen didn't notice. She flung her arms wide, pointed both hands at me through the thin screen door. Her voice cut sharp against the dusk. "He trapped us here. He threatened my baby. He stole our things, he destroyed my property." I didn't move. Just stood in the doorway, one arm braced against the jamb, groceries sagging beside me. Nothing I could say mattered now, the proof was out there. Footage lived in neighbors' phones, stamped into digital permanence. Sheriff Holt didn't flinch. He'd been carved from patience, his breath steaming slow and even while her shrieks whipped around him. "Karen," he said, voice steady, stone flat, the tone he probably reserved for bar fights and hopeless drunks. "For the last time. Leave his property." She laughed, wild, manic like the rattle of a tractor engine that refused to die. "I can't leave. He's stolen my van. You told your tow man to steal it. That's my lifeline and you're conspiring with this squatter to hold me here. You've taken us hostage." The word hostage snapped sharp enough it drew a collective murmur from the road. A couple people even barked short whispers of disbelief, their phones tight in their hands. Holt pointed behind her, down the drive where the tow truck and her minivan were still plainly visible, dragging slow but steady out of my gate. "Your vehicle's right there, ma'am. Being impounded for trespassing after being told to move it. That's not hostage. That's county procedure." Karen spun on her heel, stabbing her phone toward the lights as though wielding evidence. "There. You hear him? He admitted it. This is theft. Confiscation without representation. This will not hold up. I will make sure it doesn't hold up." Her son muttered ugly things at her side, nodding, puffing his chest. His insults oozed into the night air thick and sour. Slurs that didn't belong in any breath. His voice cracked halfway through, adolescence clipping bravado, and for a second he looked at Holt with watery eyes as if daring him to rise to the bait. Holt didn't. You didn't need to. Stand down, son, Holt said simply, his voice low enough it seemed born from the earth itself. He stepped forward, a wall and a badge, and the teenager rocked back a pace, his sneer trembling to keep shape while his fists curled at his sides. Karen's face lit bright like a flare, proud as if his ugliness was a gold medal performance. That's right, she crowed. Tell him. Don't let these criminals treat us like animals. Show them you're not afraid. He spat at Holt's boots. A wet, disgusting final punctuation. The crowd gasped. I actually saw Cray across the road almost drop his phone in disbelief before tightening his grip. That was it. That was the uncoiled thread in the spool. Holt's patience snapped, not in shouts but in movement. He closed the space between himself and Karen's boy in 3 steady strides, calm as a man going for a cup of coffee. His hand clamped on the front of that cheap hoodie, square on the chest, pressing back with a quiet ferocity that made the boy stiffen, pipe cleaner arms shaking. Karen screamed. She flew forward, shoving Holt again with both palms. Her voice fractured, shrill enough to sting the ears. Police brutality. Assault on a minor. Everyone look. He's abusing my baby. Her baby was nearly a grown man, shoulders broader than mine, lips curling with vile words he didn't even believe. But the crowd had stopped seeing victims. The crowd saw arrogance. The crowd saw a sheriff who'd let far too much rope spool out before pulling slack tight. The phones didn't lie. Ma'am, Holt barked, sharp enough finally to crack glass, you are obstructing an officer. Karen spat a curse, brought her phone so close to his face it nearly brushed his nose. That was it. He spun on her, one swift, resolute motion, the way you'd redirect a pack animal grown too wild. His hands gripped her wrists, turned her sideways, the glint of steel flashing in cruiser beams. The click of handcuffs closed across icy silence like a rifle's crack. Karen froze. Her body stiffened. For a second, her voice cut off entirely. The crowd inhaled together, one communal gasp of finality. Her son screamed. No. You can't cuff my mom. You can't take her. He lunged as if his scrawny arms could pry Holt's grip away, swinging wild. The kind of fists meant to thrash air rather than flesh. Holt snagged one, turned it clean, spun the boy half around without breaking his hold on Karen. Settle down, Holt growled. Or you'll join her. The boy froze with wrists caught, panting like a cornered dog. Shame flushed across his face, a pink stain under cruiser lights. He yanked back weakly, then slumped, chest heaving. Karen found half a voice again, muffled now by her own ragged breath and the steel bracing her arms. You'll regret this. All of you. You think videos will save you? You'll see how far my reach goes. But no one looked swayed. Not anymore. Neighbors began to peel away, shaking their heads, muttering to each other. The phone stayed tight in fists, evidence locked into glass. Every rant had been recorded. Every cracked egg filmed. Every spit and slur saved with timestamp and location. The boy saw it. His swagger fell apart when he realized his humiliation wasn't fleeting, wasn't private, it was permanent, saved forever in pockets walking home now. That's when it broke through his face, the pride curdling to shame. His chest shrank, hunched shoulders folding inward. His mouth worked like he wanted to spit another curse, but all that came was steam clouding the air. Karen, cuffed, sagged in Holt's grip like a storm that had finally exhausted its thunder. Her eyes rolled to me through the glare of headlights, twin daggers sharp but dulled by steel and silence. Her lips trembled with some final curse I couldn't hear. Holt guided her toward the cruiser, the snow crunching steady under his boots. Another deputy had arrived in ghostly silence, aiding, radio murmuring with clipped confirmations. The process was simple now, rote: name, charge, obstruction, trespassing, disturbing peace, threats. A list as heavy as the night itself. He nudged her head down so she wouldn't smack it on the doorway. She vanished into the caged dark of the cruiser back seat, eyes fierce even when dimmed behind smudged mascara. Her son lingered, sulking in the halo of lights, his body screaming with the uncomfortable realization that nothing in this moment bent his way. He wanted to fight. He wanted to scream. But weakness tethered him harder than chain. He spat at the snow one last time, but it was limp now, an empty gesture in freezing wind. I braced my arms on the doorway, crossing them as the final pieces of my groceries sagged in busted bags. Crackling eggshells crunched under Holt's boots as he climbed my steps. He met my eyes with a tired, worn half-grin. "You did right staying calm." His voice was low, practical. "Don't worry about the show. Don't worry about her. The paperwork will match the phone footage when it lands on the county clerk's desk." "It's over. Is it?" I asked, folding in the ache of holding myself still while my piece had been paraded into spectacle. He offered the kind of laugh veteran lawmen give, knowing, soft, the kind that means no storm is ever really over but this one's blown its limbs. Long memories. And phones. Sometimes that's all the truth needs. The tow truck's lights disappeared finally down the road. One by one, neighbors trudged back to porches, scarves pulled high, eyes still wide from the theater none of them had bought tickets for, but which had cost me bruised silence all the same. The boy shuffled along after the shadows, hoodie pulled low, fists jammed in pockets, small now, just a sullen child stripped of his mother's echo. The snow was covering the ruts in my yard already, smoothing over chaos into fresh white cloth. For a long moment I simply stood there, letting my breath ease, the cabin's lamp spilling golden light at my feet. The smashed eggs had hardened into crust at the bottom step. The smell of milk souring behind me still clung. But the air was beginning to settle. It wasn't peace exactly. Not yet. But it was quiet. And sometimes quiet is victory enough.